riding a horse. I mean, a few people. Apparently, there are mythic stories of certain German supply lines that were horse-driven, and they were strafed by aircraft and so on. But nobody who was really serious about going into battle was doing it on a horse. My point being, everything changed. In 20 years, everything changed. It's not a bad thing, it's a thing. So we're going to have to get off fossil fuels and onto renewable energy. And that's just how it is, you guys. It's going to be fun. Let's go.
Well, that's, the thing that we're doing in Colorado, where our large utility, Xcel Energy, is closing 2 coal-fired electrical generation plants and replacing them with wind, solar, and batteries. And for the first time, batteries used to be so expensive. For the first time, the monthly electric bill is going to go down. So now all of a sudden you begin to bring market force. So you get the clean air, the clean water, you get, you combat climate change, and you save money. That's when things can start accelerating that change.
And you guys, this is not rocket surgery. We can figure this out. And so if we're able to produce electricity that competes head to head with current gas and oil, we're going to make the transition very quickly. But it is an irony or an interesting thing that the same places that produce a lot of coal have tremendous wind resources. And one day, some of these wells, John, I don't know if you got the story, but I'm so old. I used to work in the oil field. I used to work in West Texas and New Mexico as an engineer programming these valves on this kooky water-oil separation system. But anyway, I did. But anyway,
I was an exploration geologist for 5 years for an independent oil company. Back in the early '80s.
But we got to change. Yeah. I'm not doing that anymore. We got to do something new and different, and we can. And just, we've been down this road. It just breaks my heart that people don't want the U.S. to be act like they don't want the U.S. to be the leader in this. But let's just go ahead and be leaders. So what are you going to do in the Senate? That's what everybody wants to know.
So I think that, again, finding those key steps that can happen in real time, like let's get a map of every coal-fired plant, and let's really see what it'll take to make sure that, in 2 or 3 years, we're not burning coal. Because, again, it saves money. The coal plants that are closing here were already paid off. I think we've got to recognize we've got to find good jobs and be really cognizant of the needs of people and their families to have a transition. When I got laid off as a geologist in 1986, I was out of work for 2 years. And I can tell you after, 4 or 5 months, you see a different person in the mirror. We've got to recognize these are people's lives and this transition, even though it's necessary for climate change and it's happening just from economic forces, we've got to make sure we have the skills training and this clean tech's going to create these jobs. We've got to make sure that people end up in good jobs.
And that's what everybody wants. And I just am charmed by people who just love to hate what they think is the Green New Deal. They just love hating it for some reason without really knowing what they're talking about. But I think I'm going to raise this just a schmink, as I like to say. I think what bothers people about the Green New Deal is what they perceive as the social justice component, that we want to make sure people have good jobs, that they like going to work and they contribute to a greater society so they can raise their families. Okay, what's wrong with that? And the story I like to tell, John, I used to work at Boeing on 747, and I just want to reassure everybody, as I often do, I was very well supervised. If you're on a 747, I didn't mess it up. It's good. It's a great plane. But there was a guy there. I saw him 2 years ago. I went back to the plant. My old bosses have all retired, but I was back in the plant. I met a guy who had been a stonemason, and there wasn't enough stonemasoning to do in Everett, Washington, which is where 747, 67, 787 are built. And so he got a job at Boeing building the wire bundles. Airplanes are full of wiring.
Sure.
Oh, my goodness, are there wires on airplanes. And so he uses the same skills. He sees how they fit together very quickly, anticipates what the next thing to do he needs to assemble this thing. and he rocks the house, and he's got a solid union job, and he builds beautiful airplanes. And I mention that just as an example, a personal story that I came across. Everybody, if you're a coal miner right now, there are jobs that are even nicer with more daylight that you could have that would be contributing to society making clean energy. And when we all talk about energy, everybody, what we're talking about is electricity. Electricity is magical, man. We can have an Instagram conversation, or we can make toast with the same kind of energy. And so what we want is renewably produced, reliable energy. And I want the U.S., I'm a mechanical engineer, I don't know any better. I want the U.S. to lead the world in this. Come on, everybody. It's not just technology companies writing software. It's bigger than that. It's building wind turbines and new transmission lines and more sophisticated electrical grid. And we can do this. Come on, my parents now were both veterans of World War II. My dad was a prisoner of war for 4 years. Wow. I know. In the Pacific Theater, and he spent first 3 years in China, and then as Japan's influence shrank, they were moved to the South Island of Japan. But he lived through it. That's why I'm here. My mom, John, was one of the code girls. My mother was recruited by the Navy because she was, by all accounts, good at puzzles. I will say my mother was very good at puzzles. That's true. So they sacrificed a lot for 4 years. And they pulled it off. People resolved a global crisis in 5 years. So to say that we can't accomplish these things is just weird. Come on. And we don't have, the whole thing, everybody, is not to do less. So much of what I grew up with the first Earth Day and what I would call, in a charming and loving way, what I would call hippie approach to energy, was the idea that you do less. You wear dirty clothes because you're using less clean water. You eat food that was cold because you didn't want to use energy to heat it up or whatever the heck.
You wear a vest. You wear a vest so sure. You haven't turned your heat on yet.
Well, you can do that, but here in the Los Angeles area, it's just getting cool at night. And right now, you don't want a vest. You want to try to stay
no, I was just
cool
kidding.
with your. I know. Well, and I'm kidding back with my short sleeve shirt. So anyway, what we want to do is more with less. We want to use what we have and do more. Efficiency, people. This can be done. Back to you.
So, Bill. What would you advise to everyone who's watching? What could they do at home right now that would be addressing, climate change?
Well, get ready to vote for John Hickenlooper, people. But I'm not joking, everybody. I used to say, and we'll get to what you're going to do at home, but I used to say the election of 2000 was the most important election in my lifetime. This is where a guy, and people love to hate him, Al Gore. I don't know what the deal is. People just somehow blame Al Gore for all their problems, whatever, but this is where a guy who was going to do something about climate change, even though he won the popular vote, did not become president. Well, if he had become president, we would have done something about climate change. I don't know what, we would have done something. And so this now, 20 years later, this is the most important election in my lifetime. This is it, you guys. And it's not just about winning the White House, which I'm very hopeful. But as we say, hope is not a plan. The plan is to win the White House. But we've also got to win the Senate. And we've got to have more influence in the Senate. And if we don't, and by we, I mean people who acknowledge science, for crying out loud. The irony, the just weird thing, where the vice president of the United States is saying, well, we're following the science. No, the one thing that those guys are not doing is following the science. And I don't mean to be mean or dismissive or disrespectful, but you just can't claim, Mr. Vice President, you're following the science. I mean, please. There's Dr. Fauci, Dr. Redfield, Dr. Osterholm, who are pointing out to you, Dr. Gounder, pointing out to you that you are not following the science. Please, please come up with something else. And there's a word that I know a lot of young people may not really know where it came from, gaslighting. It's from an old play that got made into a movie a couple times where the guy's dimming the lights in the house and telling his wife that she's imagining it. He's gaslighting her. No, we're not imagining that you're following the science. All right, what to do at home? So what to do at home, everybody, you can indeed turn out the lights when you're not in the room. I mean, there's a lot to that. And you can use less hot water. There's a lot to that. You can make your house more efficient. There's a verb being thrown around now, weatherize. You can make your house more, the biggest investment I made here in Los Angeles that saved me a huge amount of money was getting better windows. Windows are a huge investment, but what's a huge investment? They're less than a car. I mean, like people buy cars for $30,000, $80,000. Wow, your windows cost a lot less than that, and you can do that. But the other thing, I'll just remind parents and grown-ups: if we get your kids excited about doing something about climate change, you're going to have to do something about it. If they are constantly reminding you to recycle the bottle and turn the heat down and turn the lights off when you're not in the room, they're going to do that. They're going to make you do that. All right. But the other thing I just want to point out to everybody, climate change is a huge issue. This is not like don't litter. Every litter bit hurts. That's true. Indeed, if everybody stops littering, the world has less litter, and it's nicer and cleaner, and the environment's better. That's true. And every single thing each and every one of us does affects everybody in the world because we all share the air. That's true. But when it comes to climate change, we need big ideas, big things. And that's where I'm counting on you, Senator, to do. And even if you guys don't become the majority, may the stars forbid, it's time to convince people who have been entrenched in denial to just cut it out. We have to address this problem, everybody.
I think we're at the point now with the wildfires all across the West, with the incredible hurricanes we're seeing along the Gulf and the Carolinas. I mean, this is increasingly we're at a point now where even the major oil companies, which have long been deniers about climate change, they are coming on board. And I think, some of the basic issues of is it a fee and dividend? How do we begin to measure ways and motivate, incentivize, every aspect of our economy to do just what you're describing, be more frugal, find ways to save it. And we actually incentivize that. They make a little more money if they're frugal with their energy. What's not to like about that?
Just don't waste it. Just don't want to waste it, because we do extraordinary things with our electricity. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And everybody, after you drive an electric car, you'll never go back.
True.
I love you all, but you're never going to go back to a gas-powered car that makes noise on purpose. I'm now driving a Chevy Bolt, U.S.-built, U.S.-assembled car, designed in the U.S., and it's just fantastic. It's just a great car. And so there's a whole computation, an approximation of making electricity equivalent to gas, to gasoline. They call it 119 miles per gallon. Okay. But the car doesn't know if the electricity is coming from a nuclear power plant, a coal-fired power plant, a gas power, or a solar farm. The car doesn't know. The electricity comes in there, the car runs. If we got to electrify ground transportation, just for the sake of air pollution, let alone for efficiency, if every car got 5 times the mileage or 6 times the mileage we get now, we would be on the way to addressing climate change like that. So you guys, we can do this. Come on, let's go.
Well, and the other thing is, the great thing about it all also is that not only can we do it, but just like when John Kennedy started the race to the moon, right? He said we're so far behind, but we're going to catch up. We're going to beat the Russians to the moon. We didn't lose jobs. he created not just new jobs, but new professions, whole new industries. You look at now how much of our economy is aerospace and tied into so many of the innovations and discoveries that came out of that race. It's going to happen when we go to a clean energy.
I heard the Air Force academies in Colorado.
You bet.
They're crying out loud. Yeah. It's all, Colorado has so much high tech. It's so cool. Well, of course, and it's beautiful. So you guys, Coloradans, I really encourage you to vote for John Hickenlooper. Let's take an optimistic approach to the future and let's make big changes. We can do this. It's going to be exciting.
People can go to my website, hickenlooper.com, and look at our sustainability plan, our direct approach to tackling climate change. And hopefully people will send our plan out to more people. We'll send it to more people. And that's how, it is a battle for mind share. People have to, as you're saying, people have to believe we can do this. It's going to help our economy. We're going to have clean air, and we're going to reverse slowly but surely reverse climate change.
So the time will come, my friends, when we're going to take carbon out of the air. And we're going to do that aggressively with electricity. There's all kinds of schemes going on, but we've got to have renewable electricity. And I guess first thing, John, we got to get everybody to get on board with this. Like there's just huge opportunities. If you're out there, you're a student, and you invent a better battery, not only will you save the world for humans, you'll get rich. Come on, how cool is that? And so to oil and gas companies, and coal companies, keep in mind that their assets are buried. It's not like money in the bank. If we all decide that we can't burn this stuff anymore, then their assets are not assets. And so the energy companies, I'm sure, are going to use the huge amount of money they do have in the bank to go into the energy business, not the oil business. Of course they will. What's some other examples? I'm talking about riding horses in World War I, which people in the military don't do that anymore. There'll be a time, I'm sure, when, John, your kids or your grandkids are going to say something like, you let people drive cars? You mean you let people operate motor vehicles? Oh, yeah. Well, weren't there? There were wrecks all the time. Oh, yeah. Well, didn't that lead to a huge insurance industry to save all these? Yeah, we had all that. Yeah. So things are.
What you got to realize. You got to realize this, and I got to go. But the thing, people are still going to be driving cars 20 years from now. They're going to be driving internal combustion cars, just like people still go riding, right? People are going to do it for pleasure, not because
it's
the only way to get around.
Riding horses, yeah,
exactly. Yeah. People ride horses for the pleasure, for the recreation.
They'll go out to the racetrack and drive around, burn a little fossil fuel. But most of us are going to have electric cars, and everybody just go test drive one. It is amazing. They're just cool. And they get better every year, every week, because the tremendous innovation that we have, the great tradition in the United States of innovation is what's going to do us. Now, John, I just like to remind everybody that if you get the U.S. Constitution, which is now available in paperback, that's a joke. Article 1, Section 8 refers to the progress of science and useful arts. And then it goes on about what became copyrights and trademarks. But just that they realized in 1770s and 80s that science was a key to the future of the United States.
Well,
the progress of science and useful arts.
Truer today than it was even back then, but it was true back then. The science, the observation of our world and using what we see to predict the future and solve problems. That's created capitalism, for goodness sakes.
That's what it is. And so, you guys, we're all for capitalism. And people who say, well, I have a right not to wear a mask. No, you don't. I love you. No, you don't. We pay taxes on the whole road, but you only get to drive on one side. Okay? We have rules now, which everybody's accepted, that you wear a seatbelt, not just to protect you, But if a guy taps you from behind, you don't smash your face on the dashboard and sue him for $1 zillion. It also protects him from you. And so we have rules like that for everybody's best interest, for everybody's welfare. In the same way, everyone, please, when you're in public, please wear a mask. Please. It protects you. It protects us from you. It's a win-win. We can do this. Now, on the podcast Science Rules, check it out, turn it up loud. We've had all the people. We've had Fauci, Osterholm, brilliant, Larry Brilliant. We've had all these people on there. Everybody agrees there will be a vaccine. There will be, probably around Valentine's Day, let's say. But getting it distributed to 318 billion of us is going to take a few minutes. So we're just settle in. Settle in. When you go out, you put on a coat, a vest to keep warm. You put on a mask to stay safe. We can do this. Thank you, John. Vote Hickenlooper, people. Don't make me come over there.
Great to talk to you. I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.